You know, one simple sentence for me summarizes it all. Things can only get better.
My main house it had 10 feet of water, and it marinated in that sludge for 3 weeks almost. So the current state of my house, it has been demolished. It's a flat piece of property waiting for another house to go on that.
I lost everything that I owned. I mean, everything from family heirlooms to the paper towels sitting on your kitchen counter, and everything in between. It goes on and on.
Two beautiful, beautiful oak trees I did not lose. Local indigenous Quercus virginianus live oaks, that sprawl all over the place. Beautiful, beautiful. That's what I have left. 2 oak trees and an empty lot. Everything else is gone. That sucks. Losing everything you have, it's so overwhelming. And the grief that comes with that is just, it's profound.
We had an unspoken collective pact to pretend climate change wasn't happening, as though as long as we ignored it hard enough, it wouldn't be true. Not absolutely everyone. A few were shouting, "Fire!"
One of the greatest difficulties with climate change is that the effects of our emissions today are not actually realised in terms of the temperature for 30 to 40 years, so there's this time lag in the system. Which makes it difficult for us humans to respond, because we're evolutionarily equipped to deal with very immediate threats like advancing armies or dangerous animals. We're not so well equipped with dealing rationally with very long-term problems like climate change. So we have to act now to stop something happening in the future. If we wait until the full temperature effects are already upon us, then it's far too late to stop. If you remember one single number above all else, make it 2 degrees. Now everyone in the world pretty much, the European Union, big multinational corporations, Greenpeace, political parties, all agree that we have to stabilise global temperatures within 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. And the reason for that is because if you cross that threshold, then there are tipping points in the Earth system which could drive the warming process essentially out of control. Huge amounts of carbon could be coming out of the world's trees and the soils, methane could be coming out of the permafrost in Siberia, and it's that extra input of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere which then leads us up the worst case scenarios to 6 or more degrees and the eventual wipeout of most of life on Earth. So our emissions have been going up between, let's say, 1950 and now. They need to level out, stabilise, and then decline just as rapidly to sustainable levels, about an 80% cut by 2050. But crucially, to keep the temperature rise within 2 degrees, this point of stabilisation needs to be at around 2015. So that means really the timeline we've got, ticking clock, is that we have to stabilise global emissions within just 7 years from now, as we speak, 2008. And the scale of this task to achieve a transformation to a low-carbon economy for the entirety of human civilization is obviously it's a huge, monumental task, probably the greatest that humanity's ever faced.
Remember the English family who went to see the glacier? They're back home in Cornwall, southwest England, inspired to start tackling their own energy wasting.
It says that the average individual in the UK is responsible for emitting 10 tonnes of greenhouse gas a year.
They're calculating exactly how much climate change gases their family currently produces and how it can be reduced.
Yeah, but that's the average individual. There are 5 of us here. Whichever way you look at it, this isn't good.
We produce about half of our food, and we try and keep our consumption of meat and dairy down. My car runs on chip fat, and we do cycle when we can. We've just got our own wind turbine, which will produce all our own electricity.
We're aiming to cut down to about 1 tonne each per year, which is apparently the sustainable amount that the world's trees and plants can reabsorb.
But the big problem is flying. Just one return flight, say London to New York, would blow our entire carbon budget for about 3.5 years. Apparently, other than setting fire to a forest, flying is the single worst thing an ordinary individual can do to cause climate change. So it's a bit of a dilemma because we've just been invited to go skiing in France.
They're now flying from Newquay, which is our nearest airport, it's like 40 minutes from here, to Bergerac, which is like, you know, an hour and a half or something from it. And literally we could leave here in the morning. We live like in Cornwall. We could leave Cornwall in the morning and be in Bergerac by sort of for lunch, after lunch. But if you actually think this is going to cause the death of people, it's actually going to affect people and make that direct connection, then it is a really scary thought. Obviously, us not flying to France or not flying wherever is hardly going to solve the problem. But it's down to what you think is the correct thing to do. Because everyone else is doing it, and that's not a good reason to do anything. You have to look at the terrible things in our history that everyone regrets now. You know, massacres, the Holocaust, etc. And you know, a lot of that was just going along with what was the predominant thinking at the time. I'm almost jealous of the time 5-10 years ago when I could just jump on a plane with impunity. I didn't even think about it. It was just blissful. There's no moral dilemma there whatsoever.
Needless to say, they didn't take that flight. And joining a climate change protest march may not be everybody's idea of a 10th wedding anniversary, but Piers and Lisa have shared ideals from the moment they met.
My friend, we went along to the party together, and she just basically took me straight over to Piers and say, "Hey, look, you know, Piers, this is Lisa, you know, da-da-da-da-da." And that was it. That was it. We just and spent the whole evening talking about wind turbines.
Piers has been developing wind farms in Africa, America and Britain for over 15 years. But he knows that they will only help solve the climate crisis as a small part of a total reordering of Western society.
And there's still this idea that somehow we have to find the solution, you know, the silver bullet. No single renewable source is going to be the solution, absolutely not.
And Piers doesn't think much of the other option, whereby everyone crosses their fingers and hopes that a miracle technology will be invented in time.
I'm not saying we shouldn't be developing other stuff, absolutely, we should be. We should be throwing everything at it. But you've got to make use of what's available now. And in the UK, we've got a great wind resource. We've just got to bite the bullet and go for it.
Piers has proposed a new wind farm at Airfield Farm in Bedfordshire, central England. He could have 15 turbines installed and generating 30 megawatts of electricity within a year.
Sorry. Well, we're the leaders of the revolution, aren't we? That's it. Outrage faces. Edward, I've lost your face again. Sorry, chap. You can just cut. That's it. Yeah, good man. Right, okay.
Well, the protest balloon is now going up, but while that's happening, I'll just explain where we are. This is the site of an old World War II bomber base. Phone.
We all have a thumbs down as well.
UK-wide surveys point to about 70 to 80% in favour of wind farms as a concept. The difficulty is when you've got one on your own doorstep, and then it's the sort of not in my backyard syndrome.
Jim, what's the problem?
Well, the problem really is that this is one of the least windy sites in the country.
I hope it's not going to get too windy tomorrow and it wraps itself around the church.
Well, I live in Coddington and we're going to be absolutely surrounded by these high masts and they're going to obliterate the view.
What it normally always comes down to with wind farms is aesthetics. You know, everything else is basically put together to try and back up the ultimate thing, and the ultimate thing is they don't want it to spoil their view.
But I'm a bit concerned about the low-level noise as well.
The wind farm site is right next to the world-famous Centre Pod drag racing strip.
Anybody you ask it, nobody's against wind energy. That's the point.
Yeah.
It's against inappropriate wind energy use.
Okay.
Hypnotic. You're driving along and you tend to see the sails revolving and you're not concentrating on the driving.
Ernie Braddock will benefit financially having turbines on his farm, but now he's in conflict with his neighbour, Victoria Reeves.
Well, everyone is very unhappy about it. We're going to lose the value on our properties. We're not going to be able to sleep. It will make a difference. Ernie, you have no idea. Believe me.
According to Victoria, they stopped a wind farm up in Scotland on their other estate in Scotland back in the mid-90s, and that was a great victory.
It can't rely on the wind. It can only deliver...
It's only an additive.
An additive.
It means
Do you mean additional? Yes, it is additional.
It prolongs the resources, put it that way.
No, Ernie, it doesn't.
Oh, it's got to.
It does nothing of the sort.
Got to.
Believe me.
It's got to.
It's an emotional campaign. It's about fear, mostly based on complete bollocks, frankly. But never mind, facts are not a problem, you know.
It's a fair fight.
Yeah.
And I hope you lose.
All right.
This is August 2005, just after Mumbai's worst ever floods, and a couple of months before Jay's first flight.
Show Daddy how good you are at this. Show Daddy how fast you can go. Come on. Right. Oh.
Grandma pushing his battery operated.
So I can't see an issue there. Secondly,
very good. Grandpa.
And,
Jay is descended from one of India's richest and most powerful business dynasties. They've pioneered everything from shipbuilding in the 18th century to internet services in the 21st. In a roundabout way, his privileged upbringing sparked the idea for the low-cost airline.
What do you want me to do? I'm going to the airport. Throughout basically my life, from a young age, I mean, I used to hang out with basically in terms of, you know, the servants' kids, you know, and that sort of stuff. And, you know, when you go home, you say, you know, you suddenly think, why the hell do I have so much? And these guys have nothing. You know, that sort of shit. And that constantly ate me up. You know, everyone is here for a purpose. The idea is to realize what your higher purpose is and then understand how you're going to fulfill it. And eventually I realized what my higher purpose was. It was to ensure that I eradicated poverty.
Jay volunteers at a charity which helps villagers lift themselves out of poverty. But even by private jet and jeep, it's a 5-hour, 900-kilometer journey.
Hiring a private jet basically in terms of cost as much as a village does, you know, to take a village from below the poverty and put it above the poverty. So effectively in terms of it defeats the purpose. And therefore I decided to, you know, try the trains. From Bombay it takes about 26 hours. I said to myself, wow, this is just incredible. You know, people pay good money and still have to basically put up with this rubbish.
15 million people travel by train in India every single day. Jay's dream is to get them all off the trains and into the skies.
We're not at war at the moment. It's not a war. But if people actually recognise the full implications of what's in store for us, they would be treating it like a war. You only got to take Airfield Farm, for example. I mean, that was a US airbase. You know, people flew out of there and died for a cause which was massive at the time, a global problem. And we have ourselves now a real global problem that needs that kind of level of commitment.
There are many other industries that need to be looked into.